So, which brings me to something that triggered when you are talking. Um Normally, when I look at a job, when I look at my work, I tend to look at it from a very narrow point of view, which is to say, hey, this is what I'm paid for: 40 hours of work. I'm being made to work 100 hours. Okay, so they're taking advantage of me, and therefore, and I'm not getting paid for building the culture of the company. That's not my company, and why would you do that? Because that's not what uh, you've been hired for. And many people today wouldn't agree with what you did because they would say, hey, that's you're not paid for this, and why should you do it? How do you overcome that? Because that's really what the environment is all about, right? So therefore there's going to be a whole set of group talking about it, and therefore how do you cut the noise out of this environment?
Yes, I think it requires a certain amount of introspection and uh, honesty about what kind of person one wishes to be. At many times in my career, Swami, I was feeling the stress and pressure of the work environment, whether or not your company makes you work 80-hour weeks and pays you for 40-hour weeks. And I admit that is absolutely the tendency of any employer. If they have a well-meaning employee, they'll certainly take advantage of them, right? That's a risk we all face. So I at many times said, boy, do you really want to work so hard? Is it necessary? Do you want to have this stress and responsibility? Wouldn't you rather just have a simple job where you could come in and leave at set hours and not have to worry about all of this? My personal answer was always, after a few moments reflection, no, actually, I prefer what I'm doing. This suits my interests. I wouldn't be satisfied with something less. Related to that, not just how much you work, is the question of whether you are doing your best or doing simply enough to satisfy the job requirements. Here's how I might summarize it. I'm just making this up. If you want to excel in your job, you need to be excellent. And excellence is the best that you can do, whether someone is paying you for it or not. I don't like the feeling of doing a half-assed job. I don't like the feeling of knowing that I did the minimum and I could have done better. Does that make it possible for people to take advantage of your goodwill? Absolutely 100%. But you must also ask yourself this question. When the managers are sitting around in a room saying, who is it that we want to see promoted to the next job? They will never pick the person who is just putting in the time. Never. The person they will pick is the person who has sacrificed and worked hard and holds themselves to a personal high standard. And I think you can tell when a person is holding themselves to a high standard. They may objectively still not perform better than someone else, but you can tell when they're doing their best. That has to be intrinsic. It can't be because someone is paying for it or beating it out of you or you feel stress or an obligation. All those things might exist, but I'm saying the motivation to do the best that you can comes from within, and that will be the most important attribute that you need to cultivate over the course of your life. Just having a personal standard and living up to that standard. You're happiest and you're delighted if that work is recognized and you are paid, but it isn't always, and it's going to come to one of the most important lessons I've learned when we get to it later. It isn't always recognized, and that hurts, right? That makes you feel like a fool or a sucker or like you might be in the wrong environment. I would say change your environment before you change your behavior. If you find yourself getting taken advantage of for your goodwill, and really the company is taking advantage of you and this happens, then yes, that's a good reason to switch jobs, even though I advised before not switching jobs too frequently. If maintaining your personal standards turns you into a sucker that the company is taking advantage of, that's a good reason to consider switching your work environment. Yes.